Good morning. Whether you're here in person, joining us online, or watching later on YouTube, welcome to First Parish in Concord. I'm Reverend Seth Carrier-Ladd, your interim senior minister. My pronouns are he, him. If you're online, please feel welcome to participate fully in the chat. If you're here in person and have questions about accessibility or the building, please see our ushers or any worship leader. Masks are optional throughout our building, including in this space. We continue to use enhanced ventilation and encourage masking to keep our communal spaces safe for everyone. I invite everyone present now to turn and wave to those folks who are joining us online. However you are joining us this morning, thank you for coming. We're glad you're here. After the service, some announcements. After the service, we have our worship sharing smirkle. Look at that. Worship sharing circle. Small group conversation about the service theme in Brooks' room in person and on Zoom. We also have coffee hour, less structured way to connect. It's on Zoom. Just stay on after the service. In person, you get your coffee in the kitchen, and if you want, and mingle in the parish hall. Our standing committee rep this morning is supposed to be Jim Reynolds. Jim, are you here? No, I don't see him. He sent an email out saying he was going to be the rep. Anyways, where's Gibbs here, he's standing committee chair. You know, if you have questions about governance of the church, you can definitely ask Gib or me or anyone. There's a lot going on at First Parish tomorrow on Patriots Day. Between the pancake breakfast from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. tomorrow morning and the afternoon event at Wright Tavern, you can eat and drink your fill at First Parish tomorrow if you want. See your Sunday announcements sheet for more details. You are also cordially invited to an organ concert by our very own Eric Hanecki. There he is, he switched sides on me. He's over there. This upcoming Saturday afternoon at 4 p.m. right here in the sanctuary. He'll be joined by Siri Smedvig on violin, Nancy Ackerman on clarinet, and Beth Norton soprano with reception to follow. It says Siri Smedvig on violent here. Nice little typo. It's just that kind of morning. Part of our work of interim ministry is integrating the covenant you all created last winter and spring into the life of the congregation. There's a task force working on this, and they've created several upcoming opportunities for us to reflect on our covenant together and think about what it really means to consider how we apply it in our lives. Please look for dates, times, and registration details, again, in your Sunday announcement sheet. And speaking of the Sunday announcement sheet, you may think that I've told you everything that's in it already, but I have not. There's even more, so you should check it out as there's a lot going on at First Parish worth knowing about. And now, let's rise in body or spirit and sing our opening hymn, number 1012, When I Am Frightened.
Hold
Before I share our call to worship, I realize there is one thing I forgot, which is to name out loud, even though it's in our order of service, that the Lincoln Ringers are joining us today for our anthems and our postlude. So let's give them a warm welcome. Thank you for being with us today. All right, our call to worship is adapted from Barbara Hamilton Hallway, who wrote, "Here is our chance, once again, to live like we wish the world would live. May we find within ourselves the courage to be who we are. May we know when it is time to listen and when it is time to speak. May we trust ourselves to be the ones to find the words that need to be said or to do what needs to be done. May we trust one another and know there are many ways to go through life. May we know that though we cannot change some of what life gives to us, we can choose how we deal with what we are given. We are coming into our power, and together we can make possible justice and love. We are all connected. We depend upon one another more than we know. We are one body." May Hamilton Hallway's words guide us now into the sacred time and space. Come, let us worship together. Every Sunday morning, Unitarian Universalists across the country light a chalice to mark the beginning of their worship services. So too now do we light our chalice as we come together this morning. Let us now say our unison chalice lighting words response together. O flame of our faith, open our hearts and fill our bodies and souls with persistent strength. Enliven our spirits and engage us deeply in this life of ours, this sacred, essential moment now. So it's time for our wisdom story, which is just great, because it's one of my favorite parts of the story. But I'll share with you that it does just seem like it's a morning of things not quite going exactly as planned. It's not often on a Sunday morning that we have one person up there saying all the things, which is happening this morning, because Paul and I, Reverend Paul and I, got our wires crossed, and I thought Paul was helping me lead the service, and then he wasn't here this morning. So this is unusual, a special treat. You get to hear me all day. Maybe not a special treat, I don't know. But the wisdom story. The wisdom story today is similar to last week as one that has been told here before, I'm sure, and as one many of you have probably heard. But like all good wisdom stories, there's new things to learn or things to be reminded of each time we hear it. And so I will share this one with you, perhaps again. And it comes from the Eastern tradition. And so it goes that a woman died. She was old. She lived a long life. It wasn't a sad thing. It was time. It's all lovely. Really, I mean, sometimes death can be lovely, right? It doesn't all have to be bad. It was time. And so, as she passed on, she was greeted by a person who was accompanying her to the afterlife. And so she said, well, what happens? You know what? This is new. I've never, what's going on? What happens next? And he said, well, first we're going to go take a look at hell, and then we're going to go take a look at heaven before telling you where you end up. And so they first went to hell, and they just sort of appeared, manifested, showed up. And the woman was amazed because everywhere she looked, there were people sitting around tables, and these round tables with these wonderful feasts of food. And she's like, this doesn't look very much like hell to me. It kind of looks great. So I'm confused. But then she started to pay closer attention and look at some more details. And she noticed that all the people, despite all of the food, they looked gaunt and emaciated and really miserable. And so she was trying to figure out what was going on. And then she noticed that they all were having to use chopsticks, which might be its own hell for some people, just in and of itself, but also that the chopsticks were 3 feet long. And so that no matter what they do, the people couldn't get the food to themselves. And it wasn't an option to use your hands. That's just off the table, right? So they couldn't get the food to their mouths. And so there was this wonderful food sitting in front of them, smelled so good, and none of them could eat anything, and it was awful. It was just terrible. They kept trying, and it was bad. So this was hell. And so the person accompanying her through this little tour of the afterlife said, okay, so did you understand? Do you see what's going on here? And she said, yep, I think I got it. Great. And the person said, great, let's go, let's take our next trip and go to heaven. And she said, okay, well, let's go. And she said, yeah, we're here. And she's like, but nothing has changed. And he said, no, look carefully. And she looked, and she saw it was the same feast, the same wonderful food, the same wonderful smells. But here, even the same 3-foot-long chopsticks. Everything was the same. But do you know what the difference was? Do you know why the people were healthy and happy and full? They were feeding each other. Yes. And so, yes, feeding each other. And so that, my friends, in this afterlife was the difference between heaven and hell, was simply that in one place everybody was trying to only take care of themselves, and in the other, they were taking care of each other. And so in the service where we're talking about meeting needs and how we get our needs met, very often we can and should meet our own needs, and so often we need to rely on one another to make sure that our needs get met. And that ends our wisdom story for today. Time for the invitation to offering. Every month, we share the plate, sending half of the money we collect on Sunday mornings to a worthy organization working to transform the world that we love. This month, our Share the Plate recipient is One Tree Planted. One Tree Planted was established in 2014 to plant trees in North America, Latin America, Asia, Africa, Europe, and the Pacific, wherever trees are most needed at the current moment in time. Working with local organizations that currently plants trees in 47 countries. One Tree planted 52 million trees in 2022. 52 million trees. Now, we know carbon dioxide causes warming of the planet and climate change, and trees pull carbon dioxide out of the air. So this is a huge win for the environment. We look forward to supporting their work of planting more trees this month. We will now receive this morning's offering. Please give generously. Our reading this morning is We Give Thanks for Need, adapted from Claudia Ramish. We give thanks for the needs of our community that remind us of our common humanity. We give thanks for the needs of humanity that help us grow into the compassion of the Buddha, the love of Jesus, and the charity of Mohammed. We give thanks for the needs of our hearts that foster our commitment to share our lives and goods. We give thanks for the gifts given today, our concern, our companionship, our material goods, that will serve a good greater than any we can accomplish on our own. May this offering be a blessing to friends and strangers, neighbors, all. Here ends our reading. Why did you dump your entire bowl of cereal on the floor? Why did you hit your brother? Why did you draw on the wall with a permanent marker? Why did you kick your sister? Why did you throw that cup, plate, book, shoe, stuffed animal, block, fork, spoon across the room? And those are just a few of the why questions that occur in my household with 4 young children, and in every household with children on a regular basis. We don't always say the why questions out loud. Often we just say, it's not okay to throw your fork across the room, please don't do that. But the why is a powerful question. So many of what we call in my house not good choices. So many. Why do kids act out the way they often do? Some of it is simply them lacking and or learning executive function skills. And sometimes the bowl of cereal gets dumped on the floor just because it seemed like it might be and was actually fun. Sometimes your kid has figured out they'll get a big reaction out of you if they dump a whole bowl of food on the floor. Sometimes, though, there is more going on, especially with repeated behaviors that we might classify as acting out. As TikTok user Destiny Ann shared a couple of years ago in this video,
I am 2 seconds from tears, but my coach at Jive Parenting Institute shared a quote with me, and I have to share it with you. Your child's behavior is just their best attempt to get their needs met with the tools that they have. So show up to parenting with some empathy.
Your child's behavior is just their best attempt to get their needs met with the tools they have. So show up to parenting with some empathy. So I have found this reframing very helpful. When one of my kids acts out, especially if they act out several times in a short period, it's really easy to get frustrated, especially if I'm trying to get something done, cooking dinner, washing the dishes, eating my own dinner. It can be really hard to keep your cool when your kid acts out, especially when it happens repeatedly in a short period of time. So now, instead of getting frustrated, most of the time I have a little light bulb that goes off in my head, and I'm like, oh, okay, this child is really just not getting their needs met. I really wish they had chosen a different way to express that, but I get that they're doing the best with the tools they have. And the framing also offers me an alternative strategy that I can use to respond. Instead of just setting boundaries or raising my voice or having a time in, I can try to figure out what need my kid is trying to get met and see if it's something I can help them with. Sometimes it's as simple as they're hungry or thirsty and haven't realized it. Has that ever happened to you? Sometimes to me. Those are usually needs that are easy to meet. Oftentimes, though, it's more complicated. Maybe the kid needs attention, or maybe they're feeling like grown-ups are making all the decisions and they need some bigger sense of control. There are endless possibilities, so many needs, and often kids don't quite know how to express them. Now, if you're sitting there listening, thinking, this is a cute parenting anecdote, but none of this really applies to me, well, here's the part where it starts applying to you. Let's listen to Destiny Ann again.
Take it a step further. The people around you, your friends, your family, your coworkers, your boss, your partner, their behavior is their best attempt to get their needs met with the tools that they have. So don't take anything personal.
The people around you, your friends, your family, your coworkers, your boss, your partner, their behavior is their attempt to get their needs met with the tools that they have. Interesting. What would it look like to view every interaction you have with someone else through the lens of, this person is making their best attempt to get their needs met with the tools they have? Might that framing help you bring a little bit more empathy to the table on a day-to-day basis? Now, true that some adults maybe need to work on their strategies, because sometimes us adults also use some pretty ineffective and even harmful strategies to try to get our needs met. No one is saying that we just need to accept those bad strategies. Definitely we should set boundaries where appropriate. But thinking about people as doing their best to try to meet their needs with the tools they have might make some interactions easier to navigate. Because it's not just kids who often don't know how to express their needs. Grown-ups often have a really hard time doing this too. Being aware of your own needs is a skill, and some of us have more practice at it than others. Here's an example from my life, a time where I was sadly far too unaware of my own needs. It happened over the course of a long weekend, at a time where I was only drinking sparkling water, and our family went on a camping trip, leaving Friday afternoon, staying all day Saturday and Sunday, coming back on Monday morning. And I, in my infinite wisdom, packed 4 cans of sparkling water. And that was the only water I drank all weekend. My beloved spouse mentioned this in a casual conversation with a friend a couple of weeks later who happened to be a nutritionist, and she was pretty direct in her response to me. Seth, that is not enough water to drink over 4 days. If you don't have a significant reaction to drinking that little water, it probably means you're walking around chronically dehydrated every day, she said. Do you drink enough water? As you may have figured out, I did not at that point in time. And I wasn't even aware of it. I was not doing a good job of meeting my body's needs, in large part because I wasn't even conscious of them. I needed a new strategy, aka drink more water. Now, it wasn't the easiest thing to do to change my ingrained habits about my daily water intake, and yet it was helpful that it was something so concrete, right? Very measurable. It's a lot more challenging when the needs that grown-ups are trying to get met are emotional needs, and they are unaware of them or struggle to articulate them. Common everyday arguments with partners, for example, are often about much more than who did or didn't do the dishes or the laundry. If you go below the surface, the needs underneath are often something like, I'm feeling overwhelmed and need to not feel this way right now. Or maybe it's an unrelated need. I'm feeling really stressed at work right now and need some place to dump this stress. If the person you're interacting with isn't very aware of their needs, asking them, what do you need, might even stress them out more, especially if the answer is, I don't know. Helping people meet their needs can be tricky. And that's not even all of it. There's a third part to the video. Here we go.
Then this is the one that I think we all really need to hear. Eyes, don't start getting ghetto. Stop it. Don't get ghetto. My love, your behaviors, your decisions, your choices, your mistakes are your best attempt to get your needs met with the tools that you have. So forgive yourself, get new tools, and try again.
Your behaviors, your decisions, your choices, and your mistakes are your best attempt to get your needs met with the tools that you have. This gets us to the heart of the matter. If other people are struggling with this sometimes, there's a decent chance that each and every one of us, including you, struggles with this sometimes too. I was talking with a good friend of mine recently, and he shared that he'd recently decided that he wanted to do a better job of meeting his own needs. Curious, I asked, do you know what those are? He paused for a moment, thought, and said, I don't. I think I'm gonna have to figure that out first before I can start trying to meet them. It makes total sense, of course. To be able to meet our own needs, we need to be able to know what they are first. And many of us have some gaps in our knowledge about what our needs are, either in some specific areas, like with me and drinking water in the past, or more generally, like my friend. Destiny Ann mentioned tools and strategies. That's another place where we adults often get messed up with meeting our needs. Whether we're aware of our needs or not, we all have strategies for meeting them. For those of us privileged enough to have food security in our lives, our strategy for meeting our need for food is probably relatively straightforward. Someone in our household is in charge of going to the grocery store, someone or multiple someones in our house prepares meals, and sometimes we might go out to eat. Folks who are food insecure might have additional strategies, including seeking support from the government or visiting a local food bank. All of those strategies for meeting the need for sustenance are pretty healthy. Our strategies for meeting our emotional needs, though, are sometimes not the best. It's common for kids to need some attention from a parent, and they could communicate that the best way they can with the tools they have available. They don't have the skills yet to be able to articulate the need or to ask for what they need, so they act out because that tool works. When you act out, you get attention. We grown-ups, too, have maladaptive tools in our toolboxes that we use because it's the best way we can try to meet our own needs with the tools we have available. So here's another example from my own life of a maladaptive tool. It used to be, and especially in personal relationships, that if I felt hurt or attacked, and note I'm not saying if I was hurt or attacked, just if I felt hurt or attacked, that I would pull away and distance myself. In other words, when I felt unsafe and was trying to meet my need for safety, my strategy was to emotionally withdraw and create distance. And that strategy often felt like it worked in the short term. When I pulled away, the other person couldn't hurt me as much. But it also created long-term damage to the relationship when I was cut off and disconnected, sometimes for extended periods of time. And so this wasn't actually a good strategy. It caused me and the people I cared about harm. But for a long time, it was the only strategy I had, the strategy I had adopted as a kid, doing the best I could, that at least sort of seemed to work. Unfortunately, for a long time, as an adult, it was the only tool in my toolbox. It was just how I responded. Over time, though, I've learned more about how I want to choose to meet my need for safety, and pulling away is not how I want to live in the world anymore. So it's taken some time and effort, but I have different strategies to use now when I'm seeking safety. Sometimes our strategies for meeting our needs are great, and sometimes not so much. If you're into the philosophical side of all this and you're not already familiar, Google Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The basic idea is that we have different levels of need. Maslow's first level is physiological, the need for food, water, and shelter. Next is our need for safety of different kinds. Third level is need for connection and belonging, then esteem and worthiness, and finally self-actualization. The point being that there are many needs that we have of all different sorts and kinds. And if you think about it, much, if not most, of what we do on a day-to-day basis falls into one of two categories. Either we're trying to meet our own needs, or we're trying to help someone else meet their needs. What would it look like to look at the world through that lens? That almost everything we are doing is either working towards meeting our own needs or working towards meeting somebody else's needs. Meeting someone else's needs for justice and equality might look like working for greater justice in our country or in the larger world. We may or may not enjoy the work we do, but for those of us who have not yet retired, part of the reason why we work, if not the main reason for many of us, is so that we gain the resources we need to meet our needs for food, shelter, and leisure. So much of everything is all about meeting needs. It's kind of ironic then, given that so much of what we do is organized around meeting or trying to meet needs, that many of us are unfamiliar or are unaware of our own needs. As writer Shasta Nelson wrote, "I'm finding that one of the biggest obstacles to us asking for what we need is that we often don't even know what we need." We can often recognize when we start feeling resentful or frustrated, but we aren't very practiced at pausing and saying, "What is it I need right now?" Nelson continues, "The answer usually isn't what we think we're mad at. We think we're mad at the kids for not picking up their shoes, but really it's because when they do that, we feel something, a meaning that we have attached to that action. So it may be that we need some cooperation so that we feel more connected to the kids, like we're all working together. Or it may be that for our sanity, we actually need more order in our lives to contribute to our sense of peace. Two different needs. Stopping to not just be mad at some action, but realizing what need isn't being met helps us better communicate and problem solve. Is it really a peaceful space I need, which I could get by making one room off limits to the junk of others, or by hiring housekeeping help? Or is it feeling like my family is all in it together, which can be solved by articulating that need and having the family brainstorm ways that we can each contribute more? What is my need? She concludes. What is my need? If we're generally either trying to meet our own needs or help other people meet their needs, in both cases, it's really helpful if we're all able to articulate our needs. Because often in our interdependent lives, the difference between heaven and hell here on earth, similar to our wisdom story this morning, lies in our ability or inability to help each other get our needs met. Meeting our needs, ours and others, is a foundational practice of life, and yet it's one we spend very little time thinking about, at least directly. I mean, of course, most of us spend all or most of our time thinking about and strategizing about how to meet our needs, because that's what we do all the time. But we often don't think about it with that framing. We just know that we need to make sure we have enough to eat every day, and we do it. We make sure to sleep. We make sure to connect with other people. So much of this we do by rote, though, without actually considering what our needs are, and if there are needs we have that are going unmet. If you wanted to make a spiritual practice out of this, you could try taking time to answer the question, what is it I need today? Say every day for a week. Maybe even journal about it or talk about it with someone you care about. Some of what you need will be rote and fairly automatic, with our need to eat addressed by our daily routines of feeding. But you could really consider the question, if your life is secure enough that your basic needs will be addressed, what is it I need today on a deeper level? What do I need? And then maybe see if you can do something to get that need or those needs met. And so, my friends, I encourage you to take some time this week to reflect on what your needs are and if they're being met. I encourage you to look at friction points in your lives and in your relationships. See if you can figure out what your needs are in those situations and if they're being met. Maybe initiate a conversation with a loved one if it seems like their needs are not getting met, either because they're unaware or maybe because they aren't using a great strategy. Maybe look for some better tools for your toolbox if some of your strategies for getting your needs met maybe aren't so helpful. And most of all, try looking at the world and all the people in it as if they are doing their best to meet their needs with the tools that they have. And be gentle with them, be gentle with yourself, and offer empathy if you can. We could all use a little bit more understanding in our lives. You might even say, we need it. Amen. This is the prayerful section of our service where people share joys and sorrows. We mourn the passing of Debbie Clark, who died 2 nights ago. Our love, care, thoughts, and prayers are with her daughters Hillary and Jocelyn and their families as they mourn the loss of one held so dear. Is there anyone on your heart and in your mind right now? If so, I invite you to call their names aloud or type them into the chat now. There are also often things which are difficult sometimes to name out loud. We pause for another moment of silence for all that remains unspoken on our hearts. Our prayer this morning is by Sarah Campbell. She wrote, "Ah, how beautiful is this day, how crisp and clean the air, how clear the sky, how full of life the teeming earth. And we are alive. Yes, we feel the beat of our own hearts, the pulsing of life in our veins, the rhythm of our breathing. We come into the silence of this time with gratitude for this day. We come also with our needs. Our gratitude stirs us to praise and sing our thanksgiving. Our loneliness draws us into the company of others. Our restlessness draws us into these moments of quiet. Our longing for the Spirit brings us before the mystery of the holy. Our desire to heal our own wounds and the wounds of the world brings us here to renew our strength and our hope. And we come into this space because we have gifts to share. Words of healing and encouragement for those who are burdened, songs of praise and hope, smiles of comfort and affection, deeds of love and kindness. Each of us comes to dip into the well that nourishes our hungry spirits. Each of us comes with our own cup of goodness to pour into the well. We drink together. May we be strengthened in our bonds of love and peace. As we contemplate Campbell's words, let us enter now into a time of silence.
I am the calm in the eye of the storm, come to center. I am the calm in the eye of the storm, take a breath. I am the calm in the eye of the storm, come to center.
Now it's time for our volunteer recognition ceremony.
Good morning. Great, now it's on. Okay. Good morning. I'm Gib Metcalf, Chair of the Standing Committee, here with Sarah Ballard from the Congregational Life Committee. Here at First Parish, we are blessed to have a committed and talented staff, and at the same time, the church would not be the vibrant place that it is without the volunteers who are so active in all aspects of our church life. And so the Standing Committee and the Congregational Life Committee would like to take a few moments to acknowledge and express appreciation for the many people who volunteer and the many ways they do this. After all, it's the volunteers who help us meet the needs of all of us here in our congregation. And so as we call out different groups, if you are part of one of those groups, please raise your hand or write in the Zoom chat to indicate which group or activity you volunteered for this year.
The first group, those who attend to the business of the congregation and its buildings with their eyes on the past, present, and future of the church.
The Ministerial Transition Committee and the Ministerial Search Committee.
Governance and operations, the Standing Committee, the Nominating Committee, weekly office volunteers, including both regulars and subs, the annual pledge campaign stewards and fundraisers and committee members, annual meeting volunteers, the moderator, checkers, and Zoom chat host. Website updating and other tech support.
How we are with one another, Living the Covenant team, the Congregational Life Committee, and the Commission on Institutional Change. And keeping us connected to the UUA and our history, General Assembly delegates and Partner Congregation Committee.
Maintenance and operations of our facilities, the Wright Tavern Legacy Trust, the COVID team, maintenance volunteers, Greening the Campus Committee, Herb Garden volunteers, the Pulpit Handrail Committee, the trustees of parish donations, and the Women's Parish Association.
For worship participation and assistance, the choirs, flower committee, ushers, welcome table attendees, worship sharing circle leaders, Zoom chat hosts, they're somewhere else, Concord singing group, and all lay participants in our Sunday services.
Religious education and childcare, religious exploration guides, and coming-of-age mentors. The early birds, those who staff the parlor for young children to play before and during the Sunday service. They're probably elsewhere too.
For pastoral support, we have the By Your Side Singers, the Holden Fund panel, pastoral care lay ministers, the Shawl Ministry, support group facilitators, and First Tuesday group facilitators.
Those who bring us all church events, the Ferry Beach Planning Committee, the Men's Retreat Planners, Women's Retreat Planning Committee, small group ministry leaders, the December Children's Craft Workshop organizers and leaders.
Social action groups, the Advocates for Women's Empowerment, AWE, the Diversity Committee, Environmental Team, Funderburg Scholars, Immigration Justice Task Force, the Racial Justice Action Group, Reclaim Our Democracy, and Welcoming Walls. And then leaders of our various affinity groups, we have the Buddhist groups, the Humanist Council, the Moms Connection Group, the Photography Club, Spanish Speakers Group, Transcendentalism Council, the Women's AM/PM Book Group, and the Women's Goddess Covenant Circle. Whew. Now, if you've raised your hand before or if we've missed naming your volunteer activity, we ask you to please stand as you are able or raise your hand now so we can see all of the great volunteer work and volunteers here in the church.
Yes, so thank you for sharing a round of applause to show our thanks to each other for continuing to show up for the life of this church. Remember, too, that there are many more households who are watching on Zoom, and some of them have been raising their hands electronically. So we see you and we thank you. Volunteering keeps us connected and means we're showing up for one another. We are deeply grateful for the staff who are our partners in keeping this community strong, and we are grateful for those of you who show up and share your time and talents to help keep First Parish a thriving congregation. Thank you.
Man, there we go. Wow. So with that beautiful demonstration of how much we all work together to meet each other's needs here in this congregation and in this community, let's sing our closing hymn. So let's rise in body or spirit as we join in singing Life Calls Us On.
With the
par for the course today. The chalice has extinguished itself already. Even though we can extinguish the physical flame of our chalice as we do, the light, the love, and the hope of this community that flame represents can never be extinguished. And so it is, let us say our benediction together. Go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings. Go and be blessed and be a blessing. Amen.